Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated. By the way, go back and check out some of the stuff we put out this week. I had an interview with former Washington corner Fred Smoot that went out Thursday. Always fun and entertaining with him. And I had a roundtable with three of my co-beat writers, Sam Fortier, Pete Haley, and Matt Paris, that was out on Tuesday. Good insight into what's going on with Washington and looking ahead to this game Sunday night. I'm going to give you my keys and predictions in a minute, but first let's go over some injuries and news from Commander's facility. Anyway, let's start with corner Benjamin St-Juste. He's got the sprained right ankle. Will he play or not? He's listed as questionable. Now, it's what I was told is there's not quite as much optimism as they hoped there would be at this point in the week. He did have a good day on Friday. So what does that mean? Well, let's see how it responds Saturday and then probably Sunday morning when they go test him again. So I don't know. I think it's very, very, I don't know if I can how many varies I can put in front of questionable, but there's very questionable as to whether or not he play. If I had to guess, I probably lean slightly to the no, but I don't know how it's going to be for him Saturday or Sunday, and that will be a big key. Does he take another step? Does he have another good day Saturday, just even a walkthrough or the way they tested? That would be a good sign. Now, I will say in practice on Friday, he was limited, but he did do Thursday and Friday, he did more than he did on Wednesday. But I think they're going to be very careful with him to make sure that nothing happens beyond this week. So they need him back. They can definitely use his length and his short quickness ability. That little pivot route for a touchdown in that first game, that's a play that he defends very well. And that's, even the deep ball defends that well too. So those are plays where you noticed his absence there. And so they need him back, but I don't know. I don't know, folks. Anyway, F.A. Obata, defensive end, hurt his finger in practice the other day. He's listed as questionable, and so we'll see on him. That would be another loss if this next guy isn't available, and that's defensive end Chase Young. Will he play or not? Like, I'm kind of like you guys. I'm tired of talking about, but my job is to talk about it because he's a key player. He's a big name on this team, and there's a lot of interest in him, and it's kind of matters if he plays or not. So we ask about it. Whether or not people are tired of it, I can't help that because guess what? We're tired of asking the same questions. But the bottom line is we don't know. And so here's what I do know with him is that I think this is the closest he will be to getting out there compared to the previous weeks. I know there was one week where there was some soreness. One week he had the illness, and then they were also playing on the turf, et cetera. And it was just not a good combination for him. But this is a week where I think he's really had two more weeks since that game. The problem is it still comes down to the same thing. How confident is he in pushing and testing that knee in a game? Because of CBA, you can't have these physical practices anymore, late, especially late in the season. You're not going to have those. So you can't test it in practice the way you need. And that's taking on double teams and exploding into a 300 pound guy and getting hit from another angle, et cetera. All that stuff. You've got to have confidence that you can absorb that. Again, as I told you, it goes back to the ruptured patella tendon has been the trickier one for him to overcome. So, how confident is he? Will he play? I don't know. And Ron Rivera said it's going to come down to Sunday again. When we listen to Rivera again, he says all the same stuff. It's the same stuff they've been saying. I do sense again that if there's a time where he's going to come back, that it could definitely be this week. With Obata possibly out, then you could use him this week. The risk would be, what if he gets out there and after a few plays says, it doesn't feel right? Then you got to take him out. But what if he gets out there and says, hey, it feels better than I thought? Now you got him for 10 to 15 snaps, and that now you have your guy back. So I'm not going to commit one way or another because I think that would be silly at this point, but that's what I know. So now I told you. So anyway, let's get to the key. Oh, by the way, I made this offer the other day on the podcast, and I'm hoping somebody takes me up on it, but I'm willing to do a private Zoom. If you know somebody going through a hard time this holiday season that you think could be helped by a pick-me-up talking Commanders football, please let me know. Happy to connect with that person on Zoom and go from there. Drop me a line on Twitter at John_Keim. Maybe you can connect with me on our YouTube page, drop a note there and set it up. If somebody wants to take advantage of it, that's great. I'm happy to help and do something that maybe can distract somebody for 10 to 15 minutes. Anyway, let's get to the keys to the game. Number one, stop Daniel Jones. Joe Montana, part two, right? I mean, that's who Daniel Jones always seems to play well against Washington. I will say he's not a, people think he's a horrible quarterback. He's not a horrible quarterback. He has very little around them outside of Saquon Barkley, and yet they've been able to win 7 games with that. That's kind of impressive given what they have or don't have at receiver. So, so you got to stop him. Stopping him means stopping Saquon Barkley. You need to stop it. I felt like Washington did a good job against Barkley in that first game. They like to use those 5 D-line fronts of him. They kind of mixed and matched with the 5 D-line fronts sometimes, and then the 4-2 look at other times. They had 6 defensive backs out there, and with they go with 4-1, 4-1-6 defensive backs. So they mixed and matched a lot. But you got to stop Barkley. The problem is, and I was even talking to a defensive player on Friday. I said, you guys did a pretty good job against them, except for those 2-minute runs. When they were in the 2-minute drill, late in the first half, Barkley had a few runs there where some of his better runs. Well, the linebackers are retreating off the snap. So it's designed for them to pick up yards on the ground because you're expecting pass. Well, that's where Barkley was successful. So I kind of pointed out to one of the defensive players, he goes, yeah, the problem with him, though, he could break one at any time. And that is true. He can be 1, 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, 0, 45. You need to stop. You need to be aware of that 45 because it could happen at any point. It sounds like Barkley feels healthier than he did last week and even the first meeting. So that's a big key, stopping him, because you need to stop Jones. Because if Jones gets in those second and short situations, he's a highly effective play action and deep ball thrower. We saw that in the first game. We've seen that over the years. You need to be aware of that. So the other part is, and I'm going to get to the passing in a minute more, but the other part is his legs. And I know everybody likes these design quarterback runs. It's not about design quarterback runs. He had a fumble on one of those. Imagine if this team ran Heineke up the middle as the Giants did with Jones in the first game, and he fumbled the ball. What are you going to say? Well, it wasn't the design runs that hurt Washington. It was the scrambles. That's where you have to be able to do a better job. And some of that comes back to rush discipline. It's a phrase that's not just about the guys working together. It's sometimes you'd see like Obata sometimes freelances a little bit more and he get out of a gap because of it. And if you're going to get out of your gap, somebody's got to recover in there. And that's when you had some problems. You had the 21-yard run off a scramble. You had a couple extended drives off scrambles. Now, most of those drives where he scrambled, they ended in field goals. So that's one by and large, but still it's a problem because it extends drives and it still leads to points. So you've got to handle that better. Now, is it just a matter of spying? Well, it's not that simple because one thing, and when I had Smoot on, he advocates for playing more man-to-man. Well, I was talking to a defensive back about that, and like they played a lot of zone because they wanted to keep their eyes on Jones. You play man, he can run the hell out of it. That's when you're going to get some of those longer runs by the quarterback because you're running guys off, and now if there's an opening outside and there's nobody there, now you got 30 or 40 yards, whereas the longest one the other day was 21. Still need to be better. But that's why they played a lot of zone that first game. And I would anticipate some more of that again. But even within that, they did use a spy because on that 21-yard run, there was a spy. One of the linebackers was supposed to spy. I think it was Bostic. I'm not positive. I strike it. I don't know. I'm just assuming on that one based on the action of the play. Suffice to say, there was a spy in that play who overran the play. There was a linebacker who overran the play. Anyway, but they did have it. And there are other times where when they're using those spies, they're going to drop and they're going to have some other responsibilities, but they also keeping the eye on the quarterback. So that's what they will do that. And then sometimes Rivera was kind of saying on Friday that sometimes it's a matter of how do you want to push that pocket. Like they may design the rush to push him and force him a certain way to another side where you have that spy there as well. So again, it may look like they're in coverage a little bit, but their responsibility also is Jones. So those are some of the strategies you can use because you've got to contain those legs. Now, he does hurt other teams with his legs. This isn't the only team, but this team does get hurt a lot by those mobile quarterbacks because we've seen it. You've got to start with the rush discipline, try and keep him in that pocket and force him to make plays from there because I think it's a lot different. But again, beware that play action, the deep ball, if you get to second and short because of Barkley. The other thing is with Jones, it's stopping that pass game. He was 25 for 31 the other day. You can't have that again. You can't let him complete 80% of his passes. And there was a couple of balls were dropped. And one was a spike, one was a drop. And that deep drop could have led to game-winning points. So you got to be much better there with those situations. Some of that comes to being able to apply more pressure on him. I think being able to rotate a little bit more on the inside with some of those D linemen, I think would make a difference. But I think John Allen's playing way too many snaps, but highly effective. Anyway, but you've got to do a better job in coverage. That's where St. Juice could help, because if not, they're going to pick on whoever's in there, whether it's Danny Johnson or Christian Holmes again. They will pick on that area. Trust me on that. And so they have to do a better job there. So there you go. But it starts with this: stop Barkley, stop those scrambles. You'll have a better game. Number 2 key: handle the pressure. Do I have to explain this one? Well, I'm going to. So there's a couple ways to do it. So my first thought is we need to stop thinking of protection as just the offensive line's fault and issue, because I would hope that we know more than that by now, but I'm just going to remind it again, because so much goes into protection that I don't think people always realize, media, fans, whatever. I think a lot of people are guilty of that, sometimes even players, but it's not just in the line. So you saw even last time, like tight ends were in blocking at times. John Bates was. The backs have to do a better job in protection. There were a couple of times where Bates was locked one-on-one, did a nice job, but if you have that help, the help sometimes left him. I don't know why. But then, so if you maintain the help within, sometimes it's just the back is someone's going to read where maybe you have help to the inside and you're not, that's where you're going to stay. So Bates says, handle better. But sometimes it's also about quarterback drops. Quarterback's got to drop to the right area. If you're dropping too deep, then some of those plays where it looks like the guy might get beat around the edge at 9 or 10 yards, like, well, no, you shouldn't be that deep, because now you're giving that pass rusher a better angle to get to you. So you've got to be aware of the drops. You've got the receivers have to run, the timing of their routes have to be precise, because that delay could mean the difference between a tip ball that's a fumble, we saw that in the first game, or a sack or a completion. So there's so many factors that go into protection that it's not just as simple as offensive line has to do better. Well, yeah, and those one-on-ones, they do. But you've got to also help them with other areas. And then it's also the line calls, because we saw this a couple of times where there's guys unblocked. And the one time Thibodeau sacks Heineke, how he held on the ball in overtime, I don't know, but he did. So you've got to do better there. But sometimes, too, then the last part is if you're rushing 7 and blocking 6, which happened in the first game, then the quarterback has to know who's coming free, where do I go with the ball? That's the other part of it. So it all ties in together. And so it's more than just the line has to do better. They all have to do better with that. And then I think the other part of the handling the pressure is, can you get them to declare what they're going to do earlier? Or can you put them in a situation where maybe they're not able to disguise quite as much what they're going to do with the blitzes? For example, there are times in that first game where you're taking a linebacker left on the left outside of the defense, looping him in all the way over to the left guard. And that's so like they were able to get some stuff off that. Sometimes they're taking Thibodeau, who's lined up like on the right side, kind of over the tackle on the defense's right, and then he's dropping to a drop area on the other side on the other hash. And like you don't see a lot of defensive ends doing that. So like they do some exotic stuff like that, and they're willing to send corners and linebackers, all these guys. So can you get them out of it? Well, one of the ways that you can try that is to do a little bit what the Eagles did last week against them and spread the field a little bit. Get them to spread the field, and then then you're going to have to declare a little bit earlier. You have a little bit more ability to read what they might do and from where. That can help too. So that's one way you can help. And I think when you're looking at the receivers, I still think and I thought this in the first game, but I think this should be a good game for the receivers if you handle the pressure. So, and I'm going to give credit here to Fabian Moreau, former Redskin Fabian Moreau, who I felt played a very smart game. He's an athletic guy, but he also played a very smart game in the first game against McLaurin. McLaurin still went over 100 yards, but I felt like Moreau did a nice job and taking away some of what McLaurin wanted to do with his leverage, knowing where his help was. Again, a smart game. So how can you combat that? Well, sometimes if you're going to play heavy inside, then maybe you can run some sort of a pivot route, get back outside, or can you run some sort of a go, maybe a stop and go, slant and go, something like that, because they really want to take away the slant and then those digs. That's a lot of what they're trying to take away. So can you get them out of that by doing that, and then maybe getting them to play a little bit more honest and even, and now you have more routes at your disposal. So that's an option. I think Dotson, I'd continue to try and get that kid the ball, because that kid can make plays. And can you do that? So I think that's something else to look for. But again, it starts with handling the pressure, because if you do, now you have the ability to make plays. So I'll be curious to see how these receivers handle it, because they love playing man. They love playing man coverage. Giants do, and this team likes running against man coverage. This is a good matchup for them if they handle the pressure. Anyway, the last one, red zone success. Oh, excuse me, one more thing on handling the pressure. Then it's incumbent on, with Heineke, what we saw in that first game, sometimes the ability to extend plays on that fourth down, maybe use your legs a little bit more when possible to extend plays. And because it's never about design runs for him. You don't want that. The scrambling can be a weapon for them, and it's another way to maybe offset some of that. So anyway, there you go. Now, last key, red zone success. And they didn't have a lot of red zone drives last time, but overall, their red zone offense has not been very good. And one of the things is, and Heineke will have to do a better job in there. I think he does a nice job between the 20s. I think he throws a lot with more trust, some anticipation, and throws that might look risky, but to him are not. They might be tight windows. They might get there just ahead of the defender, but he feels good about what he sees, and he's throwing with a level of trust. You get in the red zone, it's a little bit different. In the red zone, in his 7 starts, he's 12 of 26. They need to be better. So I think it was against the Falcons, or a couple games ago, he had, or maybe it was the Texans, has John Bates in the seam route. He hits the plan step, sees it, hesitates, and then by the time he throws, it's behind him, it's high, it's incomplete. Last time against the Giants, you had De'Ami Brown on 1, but also on 3rd down and 3, you have Jahan Dotson break him behind in the back of the end zone. Now, could he see him? Well, I think what he saw, and I talked to him about this, and what he said he saw the safety react. Terry McLaurin was on the same side. He sees the safety on that side react to McLaurin. Based on the safety's reaction, he knows Dotson's open. So he knows that he's got that throw right now. He didn't make it. Why? Because he didn't see what was coming with Dotson. So he didn't want to make a blind trust throw in the red zone and risk the interception. So what he's doing is protecting the points. This goes back to last year when he threw 2 picks in the red zone against Green Bay and New Orleans, and they impacted the game. He doesn't want that to happen now. He wants to make sure you got the points, protect those points. So sometimes you're risking that 7 points to make sure you get 3. But I think you're going to have to sometimes trust a little bit more what you've seen, because those throws were there. And I think he's at that point. But again, he's really trying hard to protect that. He's also got to hit Logan Thomas if he's wide open again. But that's another key, I guess, or it would be hit the guys that are open. But the red zone success is pivotal. They run the ball pretty well down. They run it okay down there, but the passing with him, it's got to be there because the throws are there. The plays are there. It's just a matter of him trusting it a little bit more, and maybe, but again, like, he's protecting the points. And guess what? He has no picks. He hasn't thrown a pick down there this year, so that's good. But they do need to have better red zone success, and it starts with him. So, and in this game, that could be the difference between a W and an L. Anyway, there you go. Those are the keys to the game. Now my prediction. This game, I haven't changed my stance from the first game. I think that Washington is a slightly better team than the Giants, and I think they're going to win. I'm going to go 24-20, and I can see them being able to run the ball again. You can attack those edges. I like their run game against them. I like the way Brian Robinson is running. I like Wes Schweitzer at center to continue that. And so I like what they can do there. You can't fumble the ball. You can't give it a ball away in your own territory, because those one or two plays are going to decide this game. Just like each team last game could say, hey, if you make this play, this play, this play, this play, you win the game. So that's going to be the same thing this time as well. So, but I do like them. I think, if they can do the same job on Barkley they did the first time and be more effective against Jones, then they're going to win. But if you turn it over and you don't do a better job against Jones, then we'll look at another flip the coin. But I'm going to stick with Washington 24-20. That would put them at 8-5-1 and in command of that final playoff spot, but the 6th playoff spot in the NFC going into next week's game against San Francisco. Anyway, there you go. They're my keys and predictions. And I'll be back after the game to talk about whatever happens Sunday night. Going to be a fun one, folks. Big football in December in Washington. It's about time. Have fun. I'll talk to you next time.